Chapter 5. Aw, damn, y'all, you seen this? Across the kitchen table, Sierra's godfather, Neville Spencer, held up a page of the Bed-Stuy Searchlight. The wide grin he usually wore was gone. Sierra squinted. It was 10 in the morning. She'd only gotten about 3 hours of sleep and woken up to some weird texts from Robbie saying he was okay and he'd explain later, and another from Benny demanding to know where she'd run off to. "I can't see anything, man," Sierra said. "I ain't put my contacts in yet." "What happened?" Dominic Santiago, Sierra's dad, appeared in the doorway wearing his pajamas. He was short and stocky with black hair exactly everywhere on his body, except his face and the very top of his head. "Let me see. What mess Manny's shedding light on this time?" Neville passed the paper to Dominic. "Bottom of page 2. You didn't work last night, D?" "Nah, the hospital just hired a bunch of new security guys and I took a much-needed personal day, thank you very much." He looked at the paper. "Oh, man, that's a shame." "You guys! What's a shame?" Sierra forked a load of French toast into her mouth. Neville shook his head. "Nobody's safe anymore." "What's it say?" she asked. "Pass it over." Dominic handed her the searchlight. "Oh, Vernon missing," Dominic said. Sierra almost spat out her French toast. There, squished in between a wedding announcement and an article about yet another double murder at the Coltrane Projects, was a black and white picture of the thing that had attacked her last night. Old Vernon had a big smile and his eyes were wide open like he expected something great to happen at any moment. He looked a world away from the whispering fiend from the party. Vernon Chandler, 62, has been reported as missing from his Marcy Avenue apartment. Vernon was last seen 2 days ago. Family members stated he had been acting unusually quiet the past week. Vernon has no history of mental illness and no criminal history. No note was found at his domicile. A spokesman for the NYPD's 38th Precinct said that if anyone has any information about Vernon's whereabouts, they should contact the police or medical services. Otherwise, the spokesman said, he was probably just out for a stroll. "Wasn't he a buddy of Lazaro's from back in the Neville said. "Yeah." Dominic sat at the table and poured himself a cup of coffee from the carafe. "But you know," he nodded toward the kitchen where Maria was preparing another batch of French toast. "She don't like to talk about all that." "Dang, still," Neville whispered. Dominic shrugged. "I mean, it just upsets her." "Why? What don't we talk about, Dad?" Sierra said. "What do you have to do with Grandpa Lazaro?" "It's nothing, baby. All family history, drama." "You want French toast, mi amor?" Maria called from the kitchen. "I don't have to be at the graduation till noon." Dominic cleared his wife's paperwork off the table. "Sure, babe." "Seconds, Neville?" "Only if it's you that's cooking them." Neville hollered a little louder than necessary. "Sierra, baby, why's your hand shaking?" Sierra put the newspaper down. "I don't know, probably just too much coffee, I guess." She stood up. I'ma go upstairs, Kay? Still worn out from the party last night." "You going to start job hunting, mija?" Maria called over the din of clanking pots and sizzling butter. "Of course, Mommy. That's my girl." On the second floor, Sierra poked her head into her brother's room. Her 2 older brothers could not have been more different. Gael's walls were completely blank, while glossy photos of fancy guitars and half-naked zombie girls stared out from Juan's side. Gael could talk through the night about all kinds of random, ridiculous facts, while Juan spent his days crafting a careful casualness and practicing guitar at all hours. Then Gael became a Marine, which surprised no one, and Juan's salsa thrasher band Culebra got a record deal, which shocked everyone, and both disappeared suddenly and completely from Sierra's daily life. Now Gael was a 3-page letter every month about waiting for something to happen in Tora Bora, and Juan was a rare and awkward phone call from Philly or Baltimore or wherever his latest gig was. Sierra continued past her own room to the 3rd floor. The murky smell of incense and ramen noodles at the landing meant Timothy Boyd was home and trying to cook. He'd been renting the Santiago's extra apartment while he finished up his final visual arts degree at Pratt, and he pretty much stayed out of sight. Sierra went up another flight and knocked lightly on the wooden door. She always performed this useless tap-tap, even though Grandpa Lazaro never opened it or even responded. When she walked in, the gorgeous morning sky over New York unfolded before her. Lo siento. Lazaro muttered. He was sitting up in his chair, eyes watery. His fingers were clenched tightly around a scrap of lined paper. You back to that? Sierra crossed the room. What are you sorry about? What is it? She tried to see what he had clutched in his hand, but Lazaro pulled the paper tighter to himself and turned away. You okay, abuelo? Sierra plopped into the bedside easy chair. 'Cause I'm not. I found Robbie, like you said, but I don't know what to tell you. I'm in over my head already. I don't understand any of this. This guy old Vernon used to know, he showed up last night and chased me and... Lazaro lifted one trembling hand, his index finger extended. What? Sierra turned and followed an invisible line from his finger to the far wall, where Lazaro's gallery of family photographs stared back at her. Lo siento. She stood up and walked across the room. She had never paid the old pictures much mind. There was Tio Angelo, who fought with the Macheteros rebels outside of San Juan. There was Uncle Neville hanging with Sierra's mom and dad back in the 80s, all three of them looking wildly happy outside some nightclub that had long since burned down. There Sierra's mom and Tia Rosa stood next to each other outside a skating rink on Empire Boulevard, all dolled up and smiling. Sierra's grandmother, Mama Carmen, glared out of another photo. She had that look that used to light up her eyes right before someone got beat. Mama Carmen had died a few months before Lazaro's stroke. Sierra missed her grandmother's hugs more than anything. It was like a secret world of warmth and love every time they'd embrace. But what was Lazaro trying to show her? In the middle was a large group photo. Grandpa Lazaro beamed from the center of it, wearing the same creased khakis and guayabera that he'd always worn when he was with it. He was grinning that sweet abuelo grin of his, staring down the camera with an almost fevered excitement. Next to him, a young white man with a poof of dirty blonde hair stood with one arm wrapped around Lazaro's shoulder. His eyebrows were arched up, his mouth creased into a surprised half-smile, as if he'd been caught off guard by the photographer. Someone had written beside him, Dr. Jonathan Wick, in elegant, old-fashioned script. On Wick's other side, a group of about a dozen men stared intently at the camera without smiling. Each had their name written near their head. Sierra knew most of them from around the neighborhood, but a few were strangers to her. There was Delmond Alcatraz and Sonny Balboa from the barber shop, and there was Manny, looking uncharacteristically solemn, and Papa Acevedo. She squinted at the picture. The man next to Papa Acevedo had a black fingerprint smudged over his face. Beside him was his name, Vernon Chandler. What the? Sierra said out loud. Her voice sounded strange in the quiet room. She looked back at her abuelo. Grandpa Lazaro had slumped over the side of the easy chair, a strand of drool stretching from his mouth to his stained white T-shirt. He let out a high-pitched wheeze, laughed a little, and then snored again. Sierra crept toward him, her heart thundering in her ears. Lazaro's right hand clenched the armrest. She crouched beside him and peered at the edges of his fingertips. There was no ink stain on any of them from what she could tell. Lazaro snored again and startled himself awake. He looked warily around the room. Sierra took a deep breath and studied her old grandfather, the blue veins along his crinkled arms, the deep brown eyes. Abuelo, your old buddy Vernon went missing, she said, and now there's a smudge over his face in the picture. The old man shook his head slowly back and forth. The news hadn't registered. And last night, he showed up at the party, acting like a creepy freak and looking for someone named... what'd he say? Lucera. Lazaro sat up and sputtered. Lucera. Back. I don't know. Who is she, abuelo? Who's Lucera? He snapped his head toward Sierra, his eyes once again sharp. Sierra, if Lucera is back, she will help you, mija. I never should. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He shook his head, eyes glazing over again. Abuelo, I don't know where she is. Where's Lucera, abuelo? Lazaro shook his head and placed the crinkled scrap of paper in Sierra's hand. I'm sorry, he moaned. Sierra uncrinkled it. In the same elegant script as the names on the photograph, someone had written, Donde mujeres solitarias van a bailar. Where lonely women go to dance, Sierra translated. This where Lucera is? Lazaro nodded, his eyes far away again. What does it mean, abuelo? Lo siento, lo siento, lo siento, he whispered. Sierra stood and gave her grandfather a kiss on his forehead. That's all you got from me, huh? She pulled out her phone and dialed up Benny as she headed downstairs. What'd it do? Benny said. Did you have fun with your secret lover man last night? Sierra rolled her eyes. No, B. I had fun running away from that freaky guy that showed up at the party. She packed her bag and slung it over her shoulder. What? That guy chased you? What the hell happened? I don't even know what to tell you. She waved at her dad and Uncle Neville and walked out the front door. But I need a favor. Are you okay? I'm all right. Outside, it was a perfect summer day. Sierra's next-door neighbors, the Middletons, had set up a kiddie pool, and a bunch of the little ones were screaming and splashing around in it. Mrs. Middleton waved at Sierra from her stoop. Sierra smiled and waved back. It's just a lot going on, she said to Benny. Listen, can you check up on someone named Jonathan Wick? Wick like candle? Right. What you want to know? I'm not sure. He's in a picture with my granddad and some cats from around the way, but he's just a random young white dude. Just seems kinda odd. You seem kinda odd, Benny said, but that's nothing new. I'll see what I can find. Sierra turned a corner and stopped in her tracks. The portrait of Benny's brother Vincent, which was painted along the side of a laundromat, had faded, just like Papa Acevedo's, but there was something else about it. Sierra? Yeah, I'm here. Thanks, B. I'll hit you later. Sierra hung up and pocketed her phone. Vincent had been killed by the cops 3 years back. His towering image stood tall against the cement wall, arms crossed over his chest, his name written in bubbly letters across the front of his favorite hoodie. The artist had painted him smiling, that terrific Vincent cheeseball grin he'd flash after making a really stupid joke. Now his eyebrows arched and his jaw jutted out with a sharp frown as he glared into the distance. Sierra looked around. It wasn't just Papa Acevedo's mural. What is going on?